You know, based on the conversations that we have, did you start consignment first or did you do content and then consignment?
That is a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. Yeah. So when I first started the shop, the first thing I did, like I said, I started selling my collection so I can get money to start building my website. Knew I had to have that foundation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as I was building my website, obviously, as you know, you got to have really great content to get search engines and people to want to come and visit your site. And so I was just like, that's all I could do. I didn't have a whole lot to sell. I started with my, like I said, I was focused on graded comics. So I had to sell comics to get money so I could afford grading for my other comics that I wanted to send out for grading.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, while I'm doing all this, I've got nothing better to do than to create content,
Make a blog.
right? So I start blogging and I start blogging. And really that's where I started to gain my organic traffic. And then obviously as the traffic comes, so do the sales. And again, that snowball, right? It keeps rolling. Every time I sell something and I make a few bucks, that gets reinvested into, acquiring more inventory, going through that whole process again, just trying to keep it all moving forward.
Right.
I got to a point after about, how long have I been doing consignment now? Just over a year. So I got to a point after a couple of years where it's like, I needed more income streams because I wasn't willing to go into debt to like, Jessica, if you've seen some of the comic collections I've passed on buying that I know I could have made money on, but I just couldn't bring myself to break that rule of not going into debt. Like, I mean, it's like, so if I'm not going to do that, then I have to find additional income streams.
Right. You got to figure it out.
One of the things that came to is like, well, consignments. Okay, why would anybody? And my first thought was, well, why would anybody even want to do that? Why would you pay somebody else to sell your stuff? And I'm like, well, I wouldn't, but I know people will. And I realized I did a little research, and just about every major online comic shop or auction house, has some kind of consignment services. I'm like, okay, so all right, so it seems like there's a business here. Okay, now how do I make my brand stand out? Right. When somebody has heard of my comic shop or somebody has heard of, these other places that do consignments, if they haven't heard of Certified Comic Shop, why are they going to choose me? Right. Well, luckily, my commission fee is dirt cheap. That's why. And that's really actually the majority of my consignments that I started to get at first were from people I was already connected with on Instagram.
Right.
Instagram is where I spend like 99% of my social media time. I just love it over there. A lot of the BS that happens on all the other social networks just isn't on Instagram, at least in the comic community. So that's awesome. And so, yeah, I just put it out there. I'm like, hey, launching a new service, now doing consignment, half the fees that you would pay on eBay, that kind of thing. So I just made it like cheap. And for me, it wasn't necessarily at first about making money. The other part of it was keeping the virtual shelves stocked.
Right.
Again, because the shop was getting to a point where everything that I was getting back of my own stock from my own inventory from CGC was selling so fast that I couldn't keep the cycle matched up. So I'd have this huge shipment come in, 20 comics, let's say, it's gone in 10 days. And I still got 20 more at CGC that aren't going to be done for another week and a half.
Right.
And now I got to wait for those to come back. So that was the other part of it too, is not only do I get another income stream, but then also how do I like keep the shelf stocked? Because if there's this great new card shop or game shop or comic shop, and you go check it out and you go in there and it's like, where's all the stuff?
Right.
Where's the things that you promised on your big fancy sign? And if it's not there, they're never going to come back. So that was kind of like this really anxiety laden mindset I had once the shop got like churning, that I just wouldn't have enough to keep the shelves full. And then that people were going to think that the Certified Comic Shop was stupid. So yeah, so consignment is really just supposed to be a second income stream, just a way to keep the shelves full, but it turned into more than half of my business. It literally exploded, bigger than I ever anticipated. Like I said, it started with just people I was already connected to who were like, yeah, sure, you know what? I want to try that out. But I've got a couple clients now who one has sent me over 200 comics. Another one has sent me 100 with about 200 more to go that I've made some relationships with. And so there is a lot of private collectors out there who do look for that white glove service. They've got a lot of books. They have very little time, and they're more than happy to pay me or somebody to make them go away so they can make a few bucks. So that's really cool.
You know, I really like your business model because it was an organic thing. So your product that you offer and you've been able to benefit from your product is your organic search, right? So having quantity of users come into your website, being able to buy things at right prices. Obviously, if stuff is flying off the shelves for you, you know, bringing on consignment business is like that natural organic flow of the growth of your business. And on top of that, you've created like the flywheel effect, kind of like Amazon. So you had the right prices and you had product, and then now you have the service of consignment, which brings people back to your website, where now you're able to increase the user base, increase your monthly, your monthly visits per month, which also could lead to more sales. And so it's just that flywheel effect where over time you're just going to grow and grow and grow as long as you stay within that realm and just don't mess up the wheel. Don't break it. So
as long as I have things to sell, that will continue to work. Yes.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too, like what you were saying, you know, you're, other than the fact that you are so knowledgeable, you're willing to put in time. What I think you said on your website, like every 30 or so days, if something hasn't sold, you're going to go back and revisit the pricing, revisit the market, kind of get a feel for what's going on. And you keep in touch with your customers for those things, because they may want to sell something really quick and they might be a little disappointed if you can't, you know, for whatever reason, you know, market or pricing, whatever that is. So, you know, with all that work and that time that you put into, you know, so all that work and time that you put into your business, I mean, it's going to just naturally, you know, grow by itself. And then on top of that, you know, you can just, I mean, I don't know, the auctioneering thing, I think that is a really, really huge, like your pricing, your consignment rate. I just talked to some auctioneer guys that do a whole bunch in Pokemon and sports cards. Like, we're talking upwards of 35% sometimes, depending on who you go with. They don't do 35, but sometimes, a lot of the times it's what it is. So like what Amazon did, they sold stuff really cheap and it brought people back onto the platform. And then it also brought sellers to the platform because people were on the platform. It's like, okay, if you get girls to the club, you can get guys to the club because girls are there. So I don't know.
It's basic math, right?
It's basic math. And it just makes, I don't know, it just makes total sense. And you're not trying to, you know, push like a camel through a needle head, you know, that phrase, however it is. So
push a camel through a eye of a
something very small.
Something. We'll Google it later and we'll be like, oh my God, we weren't even close.
Yeah, but I really like that. And I kind of like, for my own pursuits, I've always used your ecosystem, because that's what you're doing, is you're building an ecosystem, you know, organically, like obviously through SEO, but also through, you know, word of mouth and just in general your content. So I really like how your ecosystem works.
Well, thank you.
The flywheel. Yeah. I've always
and,
told you that, but,
well, thank you. I really